All right, I am live at 7 o'clock for the unscripted mental health conversation for those who want to be healthy and discuss mental health stuff. So, we do this every Sunday at 7 o'clock where we have unscripted random conversations about anything related to mental health. And I respond to chat questions. So, since this is live, if you would like to chat a question, please do. Now, if your YouTube is your name, it's going to be pretty obvious if it's you, and other people can see it. So, there's not confidentiality. With that said, we're trying to keep it as confidential as we can. So, one thing that I will try not to do is do shout outs to specific people, but I kind of do that up to my discretion. So, this is obviously not a therapy session, and though I do provide those, and those are all confidential, um, you know, if you want to air out your dirty laundry here on the chat, that is your call, but it will not be confidential, and other people might judge. Now, with that said, when people look and it's not the live community, I don't think they can see the chat. People that look later on in the chat, so they come at a different time, they can see the chat. So, with that said, if we don't have questions, I just talk about random mental health stuff. And if we do have questions, I respond to those questions. And welcome to our little community here for R&R Mental Health, which stands for Ripley and Richard. Ripley is right off screen, but also rest and relaxation. All right, I'm already preparing my question tonight. When we see our shadow, how do we integrate into the light? It is the process of becoming whole or transformation into the light. Yeah. So shadow work, one of the most exciting, powerful, but also difficult processes, because your shadow is very elusive because it's the part of yourself that you don't like. So you shove it into the subconscious. So how can you consciously work on your subconscious? And we start often by looking at like the things in our lives that we end up resenting, people and places, because those are usually a good clue. We also can see when you have loved ones that are saying that you are a certain way, but you don't feel like that's accurate. That is probably a reflection of your shadow. Now, here's the part that is really important for understanding shadow work. It doesn't mean that your shadow is who you are. It's just an aspect of who you can be. And in acceptance and commitment therapy, also known as ACT, which is one of my main forms of therapy that I like, we encourage people to develop their identity based on self as context. In other words, seeing that they can reflect different things at different times and not trying to confine themselves from one definition or identity. Okay, so all that to say, how do we integrate? Well, we figure out a little bit of what our shadow is. First, we have to define our values. So understanding our values and being able to articulate them is huge in this process. Because what we want to look at, this is going to take a little bit of creativity, is these parts of ourselves that we associate with difficulty or problems or struggles. So like, here's a good example. I think it gets real when you start using examples. So someone who is very highly emotional and they hate that they are sad all the time. So they shove that part of their selves into their subconscious, right? Maybe they, on the surface, look calm and ready, drop bombs, but they keep on forgetting. No, that's different. That's a rap song. So maybe they identify as in control, and but every once in a while they just break down and just lose it entirely, right? Because their shadow reflection of themselves is a highly sensitive, highly emotional creature, but their persona, their identity that they live in all the time, is low in it. What's your core value, right? Start with there. And if your core value is like an expression of peace and love, and you don't want to create conflict, which is why you've shoved down that part in the emotion, then seeing how emotion can help you actually connect with other people, and the beauty of empathy and having your emotions not always result in conflict. So like this person, and this is a make-believe person. I'm not basing this on any person I'll tell you if I am. But if your person, your shadow, right, was formed, and your hatred for that emotional version of yourself because you didn't feel safe in your family, maybe your parents were like, "What's wrong with you? You're always crying. You need to stop crying. I'll give you something to cry about," right? So you shoved all that part down of you, and you thought connection was better without emotion, which is, of course, not true. And an unhealthy family environment is what we're really dealing with. Then integrating your shadow in the value of connection and love will make it way easier. If you express your shadow in opposition to your value, in other words, you're like, "I'm just going to let myself be upset and I don't care who doesn't like it," then you're probably never going to achieve congruency. So that would be shadow work. It's just not very good shadow work. It's not very helpful shadow work, because you still end up dividing yourself. The higher self that wants to be calm and connect and love, and that's their highest value, is going to conflict with the part of yourself that is emotional and expressive. So integrating it is not just giving in to the inner, child that's wanting to cry all the time, but using that part of yourself to express your values. Help me understand if that makes all sense, or if you want more examples or anything like that. But I think that's a good start. Okay. Along the path of transformation, is it possible to grow less compatible with people you are very close with? Absolutely. In fact, here's one of the things that is the real question. How do you transform in a way that will continue to be compatible? How do you encourage that, right? Because when you're transforming, what you're transforming into is not necessarily something that you can control, and there's different stages in that. Like, for instance, there might be a stage of detachment where you're angry at everybody, right? So that's not a great stage to stay at, but it might be part of the process. How do you keep a relationship in that time period? How do you keep a relationship? So let's say if you're detoxing off of drugs and you're, highly emotional and chaotic because of that, right? That's a good one. Well, what if you have the death of a child, right? That you're both mourning from, but you're at different stages of grief. So that example, as examples specifically, research, most of those couples get divorced. But they don't get divorced right after the death of the child. It's like a year later, because basically the acute trauma, they cope well. They know, hey, we've got to connect. But then, as they're supposed to give each other grace and space for grieving in their own way, because everyone grieves in a different way, they're not doing that. And they're at different stages at different times, get resentful and angry for that. So there's a lot of helpful things that can help you to stay compatible with people in the process. But one thing that I will say is accepting that the stages of development are not internalizing them, not personalizing them. It's not a sign that the person doesn't love you as much or isn't connected to you, that they're going through different stages in that process. If your core values are probably not ultimately going to change. And if they're somewhat aligned, you can usually stay connected with that person. But there's going to be, in any relationships, times where things are working and times where things are not. And so what I would say is figuring out how to support each other, figuring out how to communicate and not personalize when you're in different stages, and looking to your core values that are compatible is certain keys. And I could talk about that more, but let me know if that's enough. When it comes to establishing boundaries and living your values, at what point might you draw a line between you and someone else, distancing yourself even if that person is family? I mean, I think your question actually answers itself a little bit, because it's like, when, for me, I can't keep my core values. So there's like obviously things that aren't really your core values, but are just things that matter to you, right? Those you can be more flexible on. I'm just thinking about, I don't like football, right? Could I be in a relationship with someone like my family? My brothers like football. And sometimes they talk about it, and I give a somewhat interested response to them. I don't usually ask a lot of questions because I'm not super engaged in that. We have enough that we do have aligned, but that's not a core value. You can still be close to someone with that. If I'm in a way that I have to sacrifice my core values to remain friends with them, that's not good. And I need to create a boundary and step back in my relationship. If I am emotionally not able to sustain my values in that moment, it might be just a small, short step. Does that make sense? Let me know if I answered your question. Also, how would you navigate the dynamic at family functions? Great question. Okay, so there's a lot of different examples of that. So say you want to still go to the family, but there's certain people that you don't want to connect with, right? This is like a middle school thing that I remember hearing, but I do think it's very wise, and I don't know who said it, so this isn't clinical. But someone gave me the advice with this one girl that I was in class with, and I really had a lot of resentment towards her. I really didn't like her. And someone asked me, is there anything about her that you like? And I just answered very simply, well, she was a dancer, and I'm a dancer, different kinds of dancers, but I do like dance. And they're like, okay, just talk about dance. Make every question, every conversation about dance. So I did it. And actually, we went from enemies to friends, just a very shallow, limited friendship. There's nothing wrong within those family functions holding a very specific boundary of like, look, if I'm going to be going, these are my boundaries. This is what we're talking about, and making it positive and including things and not having to go deep on subjects. Now, at that point, if somebody's crossing your boundaries, I mean, obviously it depends, but a lot of times it's like, okay, well, then I need to step back. A lot comes down to knowing your limitations and what's ultimately triggering for you. Because there's certain things I can put up with that other people couldn't, and there's other things that other people could put up with that they would be no problem that I have a hard time with. I mean, like, I have my former roommate friend that most of you know, doesn't really seem to mind when he's with like guys that like to josh, do they still use that phrase, joshing? Mock tease, like teasing that's like in good spirit. I can handle it from some people in some contexts, but he has a way higher tolerance for that, where I'm starting to get offended for him, especially if it's online and I like want to punch the person in the face. And he's just like, yeah. Right. So you know your limits. It's not right or wrong. It's just knowing what you can handle. How can I be a supportive person with somebody I love dearly when they are having struggles and are disconnecting? So it goes back to that space and grace with so supporting them in their process and their journey and not personalizing it, not internalizing it, right? So what do they need to do, and how can I be supportive of that in that process, even if I long-term don't think it's the best, right? So, I mean, obviously, again, that depends too, right? There's some contexts where it might not be, it might be so clearly unhealthy that I don't want to support it at all. But as a therapist, I'm often looking for what I can support in my clients, right? So there might be a lot of positive changes that they can make, that I see that they can and should make. But what's the one that actually they're motivated to make right then? That's what I want to focus on, because that's the thing that matters most. It doesn't matter if I wish they wanted to change a bunch of things or didn't like that they're changing a bunch of things that that they are changing. What's the way that we agree, and focus on that first? Let me know. Again, kind of with any of these, if I answer your question sufficiently, cool. If I didn't, ask a follow-up question. Regarding the question I had above, family members that think they know what is best for you and tell you how you should live your life based on their values and live in an understanding. Yeah, so like a great phrase to memorize is something along the lines of, well, that's really interesting. And then I would start going right into curiosity of like, now, why do you feel like of course, that's my therapist tool too, right? Why do you think that is? And that way, because people love talking about themselves, I'm making it more and more about what they're going through, what they're struggling with, and less about me and my life, right? It's not, I mean, sometimes it's frustrating, and it's, I get it. Like accept the part of yourself that is triggered by it, right? Some people can handle something, some people can't handle others. But ultimately, them telling you what they should and shouldn't do, when you're super confident with your own choices and how you're living your life, unless they have control over you, it doesn't really matter, right? So they have something like legit that they're having over you, like they're providing for some part of your lifestyle financially, that's one thing. But if they don't, then it's almost like comical that that's how they think you should live your life, right? And so I just go, oh, that's so great that you feel that way. That's really interesting. Tell me more about how you feel and what you're going through and what you're experiencing. And I'm putting the spotlight on them, which also takes it off of them trying to tell me what to do in my life. So that's probably what I would do in some of those situations. Others, when they just keep going back to it and they're not listening, hey, Ripley's guest starring, yay, mostly Ripley's butt, probably, but that's okay. That's a sign of love. Yeah. If we're, if they're just insisting over and over and telling us, you need to do this, you should do this, right? I might just have a really good heart to heart with them. And I might look at them and say, I love you and I respect you and I want a relationship. Yay, Ripley's butt. And I want a relationship with you. But that has to mean that you stop trying to tell me what I should and shouldn't do with my life, because telling me once is information and I appreciate it. Telling me over and over, now it's starting an argument, and I really don't want to argue with you. I love and support your values and the way that you live your life. I'm not asking you to live your life the way that I live my life, but you should stop asking me to live my life the way that you would live yours. That's just common courtesy. If they can't respect that, then yeah, more boundaries is probably going to be necessary. Yeah, insisting over and over. And if this is a parental figure, that can be a difficult transition, because a parental figure is used to having authority over you, and you're now at the stage where they really don't. You are a grown bootied woman. Okay, that phrase, I regret saying that phrase, but you know what I mean. You are somebody who is a self-sufficient adult, and they really shouldn't be still trying to have that authority over you. But that transition process is something that some parents and some cultures don't ever think they have to make, and they do. And you can still honor them with also saying, I am my own adult. I'm at peace with the choices that I make. And if they don't respect it, then at least you can keep saying that and help yourself with your inner narrator be at peace no matter what they try to say. All right, somebody's texting me questions. Why does another person have power over me? Is it because I let them have control over me? Okay. So, it really depends on the context, right? Are we talking about, is this somebody that part of my lifestyle is because of the things they provide for me? Because then they kind of objectively do have some power over us, right? Also, it depends on our script. Yeah. So our spouse can have certain authority over us. Our lives have become enmeshed, even if it's just us trying to keep peace in the household, and we love them. So this is why relationships are so complicated, especially when you live with the person, because there's so many different aspects of that. Now, okay, so now I can pull away because that person is asking the question in the chat, and it's hard to look at text messages and the chat at the same time. But those people that are living in lives enmeshed with you, right, that your life decisions are going to affect their life decisions. And so one thing I would say, that shouldn't be the only person in your life you're connected with. Right? It's good to have community. It's good to have other support as well. But also, this is just having a lot of extra grace for yourself and them in that process of trying to figure it all out and how you're working, because they do objectively have control over each other. People that live in the same house for the rest of their life and promise that's going to be a big. Got a text and said, okay, that's fine too. All right, I'll keep trying to look at the text. Okay, so this is why marriages are tough, and romantic relationships while you live together have so many different roles at the same time. I mean, to be honest, what we look for in our spouses nowadays is historically unique because we want them to be our emotional support, our partner in life, right? So our partner in sex, love, life, jobs, careers. Sometimes they actually work together too, right? That's a lot of overlap with one person. And there are people that thrive in that. There's other times when it's like, okay, we need to get some space and grace for each other. Can hyperintelligence breed animosity and lack of empathy? Hyperintelligence is specialized. So you are going to find, if you're in the hyper intelligent population, certain parts that are huge gaps in your intelligence. Where those gaps show up vary. So you could have your hyperintelligence have a gap when it comes to empathy. So this is kind of, I'm answering it as two separate questions. That is possible, but not necessary. So a lot of hyperintelligent people are hyper empaths, but some hyperintelligent people are not. And here's part of it. Okay. So what is empathy? It's connecting with people. Here's where it comes connected with your other part of the question, with the breed animosity. People that are hyperintelligent usually struggle with depression more because they're thinking about regrets from the past, how things could have worked. They're thinking about what could possibly happen in their future. So they're also going to be more prone to falling into fantasy. They're also going to have it be harder for people to understand what they're going through. So they're going to feel more isolated. So hyperintelligence is associated with an increase in depression, increase in anxiety, and increases in feeling of loneliness. So all of those things are associated or positively correlated with hyperintelligence. Now, none of those things are a permanent, like, death sentence for relationships, connection, love, joy. It's just important to understand some of those aspects and see, why is it hard for me to connect? How can I use more effort to connect? And also, here's the thing, and this is like pot calling kettle black here when I'm saying this, but am I using my intellect to disassociate with others so I don't have to be emotionally vulnerable? Because you can intellectualize your way around emotional feelings that are uncomfortable. Instead of allowing yourself to just feel, you can just intellectualize yourself away. Or instead of being present, you can escape to fantasy of this lifestyle, that lifestyle, because you're so imaginative because you're hyperintelligence. Let me know if that answers your question. Luckily, I can go back to this live stream to take note of how you said what you said. Great nuggets. Thank you, because I'm going to need it. Awesome. Yeah, hopefully that's very helpful. And, actually, my friend was talking to me. She's not on the chat right now, but one of my friends was talking to me about this. She sent me a video of a psychologist, and the video was good. There was nothing wrong with the video, but they were talking about high functioning anxiety when somebody was doing a lot of stuff, but from this mindset that it was like they're constantly wondering if it's enough. They're questioning themselves. They're like having to proofread it over and over because they fear that they're going to mess up. And my response was that the anxiety is real there and matters, but it's actually secondary, not primary. So when we in the mental health field, when we're looking at diagnosis of stuff, we're looking at whether it's secondary or primary. Primary means that's the cause. Secondary means that's one of the side effects, essentially, of what the person is going through. The primary thing there is an identity issue. So the primary thing is not that they're going through anxiety. Anxiety is one of the symptoms of their core identity problem, because they question their identity and they're trying to prove it ChatGPT, I will admit, gave me this line. I was processing, and please don't use ChatGPT as a therapist, okay? But sometimes it can be something that I use to process different things, right? Where I go back and I go, what is your opinion on this? And then I say, ask me pointed questions, but I have my own therapist for going with actually stuff that's directive. Don't use ChatGPT for that because it's too much of a validator. So it can be actually very negative to your mental health. But anyway, the response from ChatGPT was stop auditioning for the life you already have. That's an identity problem. When you're not fully just embracing that you are enough and who you are is enough, you can be hyper anxious about everything. And so you're trying to hyper perform, because if you don't perform well enough, you fear that you'll actually lose who you are in the process. Does that make sense? What is the default button and what is hyperintelligence? So hyperintelligence is basically a very high level of intelligence that starts to become specialized. So it could be the level of genius. So like technically that's 125 IQ or higher. But it's definitely when somebody is far outside of the normal distribution of intelligences. And there's pros and cons with that, as I talked about. What is the default button? I don't know what the default button is, so I don't know what you're referring to on that. I might have said something similar, but I'm not sure what you're referring to. I would need more details to that. I was really hoping the answer you gave me would be a simple yes or no. Now I just have more to think about. Well, okay, so then the simple answer is yes. But you've known me long enough to know that I rarely give a simple answer to anything. All right, what's crazy and I feel alone? What's crazy is that I can feel alone in a crowd with all my family around me loving me, but I feel alone, or I want to be alone. Okay, so those are two different things. The feeling alone, I normally, and in therapy, it's often, it depends, right? It's often the answer. But the feeling alone is usually a lack of being understood. So you can be in a crowd of people. In fact, the two of the best songwriters of all time, Simon and Garfunkel and Jim Croce, I want to say, wrote songs about how lonely New York City was, even though it's so populated. The Only Living Boy in New York and New York's Not My Home are the two songs, right? Because if you're misunderstood and not connected, it really is irrelevant how many people are around. So if you're in an environment where you don't feel like you can be yourself, you can be surrounded by people, and the more people talk to you, the more drained and isolated you feel, because you have to put on a persona rather than just be yourself. And if you've ever been around someone that just makes you feel okay about being you and how refreshing and easy that is, it shows you the exact opposite. So even when it comes to like introversion, extroversion, I am an introvert. So generally being around people is draining to me. But there are certain people that just could, by their energy, make me feel safe to be myself. And those people are the easiest people for me to be around, because there's no judgment, there's no condemnation, there's safety. Though that is huge. So that's really what you're probably talking about. Now, wanting to be alone, this is the discernment that only you can make. A therapist can help you guide you through it, but am I looking to isolate because of emotional vulnerability and I need to feel connected and be connected despite the fact that I want to run away? Or do I need to retreat, basically a tactical retreat, to process through so I can come back and self-regulate and then enter in? And that really just depends on who you are and how best you work. I am often somebody that needs time to pull back, to process, self-regulate, and then I can come back and be the best version of myself. I can fall into isolation, so it's not an either or for people. And I have to watch out for that to make sure that I'm not isolating from people. Sound of Silence, my favorite song, probably the best song ever written, I would say. Lyrically, like poetically, I would say Sound of Silence is maybe the best song ever written. That is, of course, a clinical fact, not just my opinion. I'm kidding. That is, of course, my opinion. But it is, if you've ever heard it. If you never heard it and you like folk music, you can listen to Simon Garfunkel. But if you like rock, there's versions of that one too. All right. How can I fight the feelings of wanting to give up? So I would tap into your values, right? Who is the eternal person that you want to be, right? What is the ideal version of yourself? Look at your hero list for inspiration. So who are the people throughout human history that have most inspired you? Even through fiction, right? What are the characters of books or movies or TV shows that you really have seen and inspire you, and draw that inspiration to ask yourself, who do I ultimately want to be? But at the same time, the other side of it, so that's the inspiration side, that's the gritting your way through it. The other part is to say, what are these feelings? And what is the emotional root of those feelings? And where can I give space to those feelings without allowing myself to give in to them? So when it comes to validating feelings, here's a nuance that I think is gold. All right, I'll return to this over and over. We want to validate feelings, but not the opinions that our feelings give us. So your feelings matter. Feel them. Give them time. Put them on the calendar. Like literally set a time in your schedule that you are allowing yourself to feel. But your opinions that come in those feelings, like I'm a failure, this is never going to work, everyone's going to leave me, I'm a mistake, whatever those feelings might be, don't give any attention to those feelings or those opinions, right? Give attention to the feelings. Does that make sense? So embrace the feelings. Well, actually, I would say not embrace them, but like allow for them. Allow them to come, allow them to go and pass through. But if you hold on to the opinions that you have while you're feeling those things, it's probably going to work to your detriment. It's probably going to actually prolong healing, right? Because you're going to get stuck in them. That's what happens when you start to believe opinions that come from negative feelings. Does that make sense? There's nuance there that's really important because you could go either way on that. Jim Croce, Operator and Time in a Bottle, amazing songs. Yeah, now we're going to just fun song stuff, but like Operator, oh man, the way Jim Croce could tell you a story. He was such a good storyteller in his songs. Rare talent for songwriting to do that kind of, Operator, could you help me place this call? See, the number on the matchbook is old and faded. She's living in LA with my best old ex-friend Ray. Gosh, she said she knew well and sometimes hated, but ain't that the way things go? Just immediately, that whole story. You can feel it, right? Time in a Bottle is good too. The one person who inspires me is pushing me away. And see, I think that's a little bit of, if I'm going to call you on it, all right, this is the one problem with the live stream is I'm going to be a little more brutal and not as therapeutic, because it's more of informational than like a therapy session. But I will say, hey, what's up, Cammy girl? What I will say about the one person inspiring me is pushing me away, who inspires me is pushing me away, that sounds a little catastrophic. It sounds like catastrophic thinking. I don't think there's only one person on the planet who ever inspires you. I think there's a lot of people who inspire you. But it's really tough when someone you love, you feel like they're pushing you away. So let's nuance this. Let's see what we can do to support that person, but also get support from other people who inspire you and not convince yourself that there's only one person. I am doing well. Thank you for asking. Overall life is good. There's ups and downs, and self-sabotage can be a problem in that. Well, I was talking about catastrophic thinking. I think you logged in right when I started talking about it, but that is a form of self-sabotage, right? Because when we get in this negative spot about like feeling just total despair and permanence and pervasiveness, and it's all just terrible and it's always going to be terrible, we start to self-sabotage the thing that we most want and we make it harder. Happy to hear from you too. Song I'm writing is the best song ever written. The song that you're writing is the best song ever written. Well, that's cool. Well, that's good confidence. It sounds reminds me a little bit of the song Tribute with Tenacious D. It was the best song in the world. This song isn't that song, though, because this song didn't even like that, because we couldn't remember the best song in the world, but it was the best song in the world. All right. I am an isolator who sometimes labels as spiritual alignment. Yeah. Oh, very good insight. And I have to say, I agree on that one, because it's like, this is one of the things that's really hard when your defense mechanisms are wired from toxic environments, because it's hard to go, when are my signals saying alert, 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 and they're accurate, and I need to listen, and when they're just, as you said, labels of spiritual alignment, but really emotional isolation, and I actually need to lean into community. So like when you're depressed, as an example, some of the time, the thing that you most want to do would be the worst things for your mental health to do. And the things you least want to do would be the healthiest things that you want to do. And so that's why it helps to have people that can guide us in the process, that are supportive, that are non-biased, that are just there to aid and help. And if you don't have that, please do look into getting a therapist, go to a community support group, whether it's AA, Celebrate Recovery, you don't even have to struggle with recovery. There's EA, Emotional Anonymous groups. There's a whole bunch of different groups and different things like that can help if you can't afford therapy. But in my mind, most people need therapy at some point in their life. All right, keep the questions going. But I'll go back to that how am I question. Life is a roller coaster. There's never times where everything is going right. There's quieter times and there's louder times. But when I'm okay with me, that makes such a big difference in the long term. Yes, I agree. I know this may not be everyone's opinion, but I really need extra help, as I did try everything the natural way. So I did combine therapy with ADHD medication and all the anxiety. And that is honestly the way for evidence-based when it comes to medication is with therapy. They're more beneficial together. Medication tends to be less effective over time, and therapy tends to be more effective over time. So they work great in combination together to help us to be balanced. But the other thing that I will say is I am at this point, this is true of a lot of therapists, by the way, whether they want to admit it or not. In fact, somebody said, every therapist is crazy. Yeah, a little bit. That's usually why they get in therapy. I am someone who's a high maintenance mental health individual. If I am on my game doing all my things, I'm super happy and healthy, but that's a lot. Like the stuff that I do to stay healthy is not little bit. It's a lot of stuff, right? It's physically, emotionally, spiritually. I do a lot of stuff with a weekly, daily routines to stay healthy, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So if you need help on any of those things, partly why I can help people is because I've had to do all those things. When I was younger, I struggled with depression all the time. I haven't really fallen into a season of depression. I've had sad days, but a season of depression in a long time because of these mental health tools. Yes, and thank you for being my therapist. Oh, you're welcome. I had subsided as it was caused by this. I don't know what you said for this. Sorry, sometimes it's hard to keep track. And it was good seeing you. I have to go. God bless you. Yeah, check in soon. Okay, cool. Yeah, for sure. All right. And then somebody's asking me if I want a hot peanut butter cookie, and it's half eaten, so I'm gonna pass. But thanks for offering. That's not on the chat. That's somebody texting me stuff that's involved in the chat too. So anyway, now they're laughing at that. All right. So keep a couple questions going. What was I talking about before the questions? well, we were talking about catastrophizing. I don't know why my words not coming out so good. But that can be a huge thing when it's just like one thing goes wrong and it's everything going wrong with us. And I'm not trying to minimize the emotions, because again, the nuance is like, dude, if what you need right now is to just be a baby and cry and feel all those emotions, great. That is awesome. That is okay. And sometimes that's the first stage to what healthy looks like, right? Do it, allow for it, but just don't listen to yourself while you're doing it, because your mind is going to go all over the place while your emotions are allowing yourself to express. So this is why it's sometimes good to realize that your emotions are one thing and your mind is another, and that they're related and connected, but they can be different. How do you rise out of a depression without medication? So different things have helped me during different phases of all of the different techniques. So that's a question that I could take 1,000 different directions, because there's so many great interventions, is what they're called, but like tools, skills to build. One that I will use as one of my favorite metaphors that they use in ACT is the process of how to get out of quicksand. So getting out of depression is like getting out of quicksand. We think that the thing that we should do is to push really hard, but what that ends up doing is actually having us sink down faster and stronger into the quicksand. What you actually want to do is weight distribution, which means actually getting your face into the quicksand. So you're actually embracing that feeling, right? You're going right down against it and laying flat against the quicksand, and then just inching your way slowly towards the ideal version of yourself, right? So you're slowly, just little by little, going towards your higher core values while you're allowing yourself to be all dirty. And so what people get stuck in is they're trying to not get dirty and push to be the best version of themselves. And this is where you're going to get in a negative feedback loop, because the way to mental health is not through effort, and it involves dealing with the dirty stuff. You have to deal with the mess. Is true feelings or are not true feelings are not facts? Yeah. So true feelings are not facts is the answer to your question. Yeah. But true feelings matter. They're important, but they are not facts. Where would you recommend men go to have male mentorship and a safe space to discuss life, to experience support and encourage from healthy male figures? Oh man. I'm trying to think of, like, I would be like, my garage is actually, can they wake up at 5 a.m. and work out with me? Because that is one of the things that we I don't really have a group that's very, very regular right now, but over time that's been kind of thing. We work out, we get emotional. Oh yeah, perfect. Men's Breaking Chains men's ministry. I should have thought of that immediately. So Tuesday night at 6 o'clock, if you're in Vero Beach at Freedom Church, is a group that has I would say a fairly big size group of guys that are raw and real, and can talk about that stuff in a safe space and supportive. But yeah, I mean, that was always the thing with when I did those groups of little guys, informal, this was, having it be where we didn't do that crap talking. We kept it positive, we kept it loving, and we allowed people to be emotional. And man, we would cry, we would sweat, we would pray. It's a beautiful thing. We still do some stuff like that sometimes. So almost like surrendering. Not sure what you're referring to, but I'm sure it's something of the past. Yeah. Oh, surrendering from the depression thing. Yes. It's going to feel like surrendering. And that's the thing why we don't do it, is because if our greatest fear with depression is that, yes, I want to work out tomorrow, Joe. Our greatest fear is not that we are going to feel depression, but that we're going to get stuck in it forever. So you can see why we would be naturally resistant to putting our face in the dirt if we're afraid of being stuck in depression. You'd see why we're trying to stay away from the dirt and just kind of push ourselves out of it. But that just doesn't work normally. You said something this morning about procrastinating when there's a fear of failing. What is your advice for facing fear and moving forward? I'm going to go to exposure therapy on that because it's so like evidence-based, proven to work. I was talking to someone today that had a fear of the ocean, and they're like, I've tried everything and I can't get over it. And it's like, do you want to get over it? Yeah, I do. Okay, good. Exposure therapy. It's a guaranteed fix. And they're like, I don't think so. And it's like, why not? Because it's just too scary. Well, that's not how exposure therapy works. Exposure therapy works so slow. You're introduced to even just the thought of what you're afraid of until it no longer causes anxiety. And then you go just one little step closer. Now, the hard part is it doesn't work for everything. But there's a lot of things when it comes to facing fears that exposure therapy does work. So like romantic relationships is an example. You can't slowly progress in romantic relationships on a way that is aligned with your anxiety on that moment because you drive your partner crazy. So unfortunately, if it's a fear of attachment, exposure therapy is hard to do. But if it's a fear of the ocean, it's a fear of dirty, it's a fear of failure, you can actually do it. You would actually intentionally start failing, right? So it depends on what you're procrastinating from. But if it's a fear of failing some things, like I'm sad to say that if you really want to be free of that fear, allowing yourself to fail and allowing it to not make you anxious as you go really slowly into that failure is how you'll get through it. Why is it hard to let go of things in relationships that you know are unhealthy? When do you get to the point that you don't feel like you gave up hope or grace for another? So this is really easy. So in fairness, it's actually not hard at all if you're a sociopath. So that is one option. Become a sociopath, which instinctually you might want to do, right? There might be some point that you're just like, oh man, I wish I was a sociopath, or I'm just going to become a sociopath and feel sociopathic from now on so I no longer have to get caught into this attachment cycle. But a better way is the opposite. Understanding and embracing the part of you that so loves people, that so never wants to give up on people. These are virtues. Hug that part of it, right? Love that part of that, right? And then see what is the next step towards your true north. The next step towards your highest values, and taking it one step at a time. But the main thing I would say is be gracious to yourself, because it is because you are such a deep empath, loving person that you never want to give up on people. But if you keep moving towards the healthiest version of you and those people aren't healthy, then eventually your momentum towards the healthiest version of you creates enough space that it's easier to let go. That's a short answer, but let me know if that answers enough of your question. Yeah, my face has grown comfortable to be covered in dirt. Yeah, me too at this point. As Mike used to say, leaning into that wood chipper has become the way that I want to live my life. Can a psychopath be a sociopath? Okay, so I'm going to get asking for a friend. I love it. That's funny. I'm going to give the clinical definition and then what the connotation is. So the clinical definition is there's no difference between a sociopath and a psychopath because they're not actually clinical terms. They're not actually clinically defined. And when they were just different words for the same thing. So it's really technically, according to the DSM-5, an antisocial personality disorder, not either of those terms. How it's used is sociopath, and I highly recommend the book Sociopath, which is written by a sociopath. Even if you're not a sociopath, it is very interesting, very informative, and entertaining too. The author really gives you a sense of their life in a way that creates one narrative. Like, she's brilliant. She's a brilliant sociopath. And the book goes to a positive place. So she's not a murderer. She's not, but that would be the connotation definition. So a psychopath is like somebody that is like a criminal and, murders people and stuff like that. And that's the idea of it. That's not technical and clinical, but that's how some people refer to it. Somebody's, by the way, giving you BS pseudoscience stuff when they start like acting like there's this research says this is true of a sociopath, where this is true of a psychopath. There isn't research that's going to have a difference between a psychopath and a sociopath, because clinically, and that's what the hat we put on when we do research, there isn't difference, right? But in terms of how people talk about it, the psychopath is like from the book Sociopath, which I think eventually is going to probably be clinical, because she is a psychiatrist now, or psychologist now. But it's a spectrum. And so you would say psychopath would be the high end of the antisocial personality disorder spectrum, and sociopath would be the lower end of that. Did that answer my question, your question, our questions? All right. Never give up on me. Of course, I'm never going to give up on you. I'm trying. No one thinks I'm trying to sleep. No one thinks I'm trying to sleep. Everyone's trying to, just thinks I want all the attention. So people that are, it's like, I remember with dealing with migraines, the frustration of having people just be like, it's all in your head. And it's like, where else will you have a migraine than in your head? Of course it's in my head. In my head is where the migraine exists. But people think if I just think my way out of a migraine, or they think that I'm thinking my way into a migraine, and it's really, hey, handsome. It's really frustrating when people are minimizing this pain that they can't tell that you're in. And I've dealt with that my whole life, which is one of the things that I think makes me a pretty good therapist, is I try not to do that, because you never know how difficult things are for someone else. And thanks for the encouragement. Yes, anybody who's watching, please like it. Now we got 4 likes, but 9 people watching and only 2 likes. What a shame. Like the stream, people. Thank you. Yeah, comments, likes, subscribes, shares, all of these things. Comments on my R&R mental health videos too are huge. Just, for the algorithm. I notice when people start commenting, all of a sudden the views go shot way up, because at this point in my channel's life, it's all based on the YouTube algorithm, whether it gets shown to people or not. So I do appreciate that support for sure. But anyway, what were we talking about? So when people are struggling and they feel like other people are minimizing their pain. I remember my uncle like stopped for a long time going to church because he lost a kid. And this is many, many years ago. And it was, I think, a miscarriage. And someone was like, you just need to get over it. It's been too long. You need to focus on your kids that are still alive, or something like that. It's like, man, yeah, right now it's 10. It says on my for 8 likes. Yep, I appreciate it. Thanks for liking. See, that person who made that comment is a YouTuber himself, so he knows the struggle of trying to grow your YouTube algorithm. Love this to see the support. Yes, I appreciate everybody who's coming on these channels for stuff. But anyway, all that to say is everybody has different areas of struggle, and no one else can feel it. So like, don't push yourself or allow people to push you on things that are just struggles for you. Be patient, right? It doesn't matter how long it takes you. It might take you way longer than it takes other people to get certain things in your mental health. And there might be other, talk about hyperintelligence, this is how it works. There might be other things that you can get instantly. So just be gracious to yourself and give it time for sure. All right. So that, speaking of time, we're about at time for our stream today. And I do appreciate everybody who was participating in the chat. This was a great one. So I really appreciate it. I really thought this was not going to be one of our more lively chats, but everybody showed up and made a lot of comments, and I really do appreciate it. It really makes a big difference. So yeah, I'm glad that everybody who made it on live did, and everybody who liked, everybody who watched. If you're watching later in the week, thanks for watching it. Feel free, but also try to make it next Sunday at 7 o'clock, because we try to be consistent more Sundays than not. We are there every Sunday. It's like that 2 out of 3 times it works every time. That might not be the exact line, but more Sundays than not, we're there every Sunday. What we do, try to do it. Click my name and hit add mod. You can, all right, yeah, I can do that. How do you do that? Add as moderator. How about that? Okay. Anyway, yeah, maybe I should ask you about also why one of my friends tries to make comments and can't for some reason, because I tried to make sure that I added them. But anyway, so good night, great chat. Yeah. So thanks all for logging in, and I will see you guys all next week. All right. Love you all. One last cat moment. Cat star. Yay. Adventure cat. Adventure cat. Look how much she just tolerates me. Like, she's not complaining at all. Just right there. Adventure cat. We should just make this the live stream next week. It's just going to be this the whole time. She'll probably get this is when you know you've connected to a cat, because she's no way she's enjoying this right now. But she doesn't mind it. She's just tolerating it because she knows that I love her and I take care of her. She's a good girl. Anyway, all right. Love you all. See you guys next week.